Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Best on Wellbeing podcast. How many of us truly listen to one another? That's the question I want to ask today. And the reason I ask is because oftentimes when I'm speaking to people and someone's talking to me, I can easily find myself with my mind going somewhere else. Or even more frequently, when someone's talking to me, I'm actually more concerned about what I'm going to say when they give me a little pause. I can just jump in there and say the thing that I want to say. So it's often quite common that when someone's speaking to me, I'm more preoccupied by my own thoughts, by what I want to say, than actually truly listening. And then if that kind of thing can go on, then it becomes almost a bit of a power dynamic with somebody you're having a conversation with, and who can get the next word in, and who has the cooler story, or who has the more interesting occurrence, and whose kid did the more interesting thing. And it just becomes this bizarre sort of interaction where no one's truly listening to one another. And certainly I've been guilty of that many times in my life. So when we talk about active listening and truly listening to somebody else, to one another, that can sometimes be like a compliment. So it's like, oh, you're such a good listener. You're a good listener. And that's a nice thing to hear for sure. And people feel supported when they feel truly listened to. But when we do, let's say we'll call it the act of active listening, let's put aside the fact that for the most part, it does feel nice for the other person. People feel supported and heard when they sense that someone's really, truly listening to them. But like I've gone on and on in this podcast, the idea of being kind to others is ultimately because it's good for us. When I'm trying to be living my life in a kind and courteous way, to try to be a good person and try to be generous, or whatever the virtues I want to try to live by, it's ultimately because it's good for my well-being. I'm very concerned about my well-being, and being courteous and kind is a way to support my well-being. And I would say it's the same principle with active listening. If I have a dynamic where I'm not really listening and I just want to say the thing that's on my head, I can't get my opinion in, and I don't truly listen to them. I am more stuck in my head. And when I'm more stuck in my own head, then I'm less likely to feel calm and in tune with myself, and my well-being is likely to diminish. But when I truly actively listen to somebody else, when I truly give attention, there's different ways to focus is maybe one way to say it, but to give attention, to be fully there, to fully try to understand the energy, the words, the content, where the person's coming from, and just kind of be quiet and just all there, all just listening very actively. It's an exercise of attention. And to go back to some of the neuroscience that we've talked about, when our attention centers are well exercised, when our attention centers of the brain are well activated and become more dominant in the way our brain functions, people typically report higher levels of well-being. And vice versa, when our attention centers are easily overpowered by the centers of the brain that tend to ruminate and overthink, some people refer to the default mode network as that part of the brain. But when our attention centers don't function optimally, it's easier to see our well-being diminish. So actively listening, when you really give attention to somebody else, like someone's talking to you and you're really, really listening, and you catch yourself when when you catch yourself that you're just more concerned about the thing in your own head than what they're saying. And then you just drop it and just really pay attention to the other person. That can become a very good feeling in the body, where all of a sudden you're sensing your whole awareness. You become almost like you can sense yourself more as this sort of empty field of just awareness, of attention, just paying attention to the other person. And you kind of eventually can even get a sense of like, you can feel a little bit of their energy, of their sort of formless sense of self. Like the like I said, it's like the wave starts to feel, themselves as the water and the ocean, and then it starts to feel the other wave as the water in the ocean. And it can become a very pleasant feeling, a very interesting, like, something that supports well-being, to truly actively listen. And now, there are obviously some caveats to that. Some people sometimes will talk and talk and talk, and sometimes it's okay to be firm and create boundaries. So it's like, okay, I'm done this conversation. Thank you. And I'll see you next time. And you got to end the conversation. Or sometimes it's okay to express to somebody else that, you've been talking about yourself for the last hour. I'd like to share a little bit about what's going on in my life. So obviously we need a balance to those things. So it's not to be extreme and they're like actively listening, for like hours, and you feel your energy being drained. This is not meant to be a draining thing where like, somebody's like, you're being, let's say, not authentic in terms of your active listening. You're just there and it's like, I don't want to listen to this person anymore, but I'm going to pretend to be nice. That's not what we're talking about here. And even that, I'll be honest, there have been times where like, okay, I'm going to be actively listening. I'm trying to understand and then if it's like, this person won't let anybody else get a word in, and it's just talking about themselves, and obviously doesn't care about anybody else but themselves, and you can feel that kind of energy. Even then, I think you can maybe allow your mind not to care so much about the content of their words, but you can still start to truly feel your own energy field, feel something deeper in the other person beyond the words. And even then, it's like, even though in another circumstance, it could feel like they're draining your energy, but you feel quite light because you're fully there with yourself and you're paying attention, yes, to that person and in part to their words, but something deeper. And that's what you're interacting with, not necessarily the surface level stuff. So that's an example more of extreme when somebody is maybe a little bit dysfunctional or tries to pull a bit of like energy from others and things like that. But for the most part, most people are pretty balanced people. And even in that situation, a lot of us just don't really listen to one another. And I am very guilty of that many, many times. But when I do actively listen, when I do really pay attention to the other person, and usually, when you do that, people will sense it. And all of a sudden they give you space. Okay, well, what about you? Tell me about you. And then, your moment comes to talk. And then you can share about yourself. And then you go quiet again. And then and then it becomes these very pleasant conversations. And the other thing too is sometimes to just let go of our own story. Why do we always have to talk about our own story? Like what's happening in this detail and that detail in my life, just to let that story go and just be there, be present with whatever the other person's doing. So, but when I can be actively listening, when I truly do that, it is a truly pleasant feeling. For me, it improves my well-being. I feel like my ability to be attentive improves. And I guess, a side effect of that is like, sometimes I felt like I was really listened to. Thank you for doing that. And you're like, yeah, no problem. And you have a good feeling because someone felt appreciated and things like that. So those are nice things too. And that's a nice part of being actively listening. But I come around to the same theme again and again, that when I try to actively listen, we could on a certain surface level, you could say that it's a nice thing. It's a generous thing to do, to be actively listening to the other person. Yes, I suppose it is. But the true motive to truly actively listen is to be present, to be attentive, to be fully there, have a quieter mind where I'm really trying to not let my thoughts interfere with this process of actively listening. And when I do that, like there's much more spaciousness in me. There's much more lightness, lightheartedness, and a sense of ease and a sense of well-being. And so my journey towards improving my ability to truly listen to others, to truly be present when someone's speaking to me, is ultimately that which will assist in my journey towards greater well-being. Thank you, folks. We'll see you next time.